Right, welcome to the Downtown Den. Delighted to be joined by Gina Broadhurst. Not the first time that she's been with us. Gina is the founder of Forgotten Ltd. Forgotten is a campaign, states really, for all those people that the government appear to have forgotten during this crisis, and its company directors. And Gina, I know you've been working hard to try and convince Rishi Sunak and colleagues that there are ways in which he can help people in this position. Tell us what the latest is on that.
So firstly, thank you for having me back in the den. It's nice to see you again. So yeah, we've been campaigning now for 8 months. It's a long, hard slog. We've tried innumerable different ways to engage with Treasury. We have had some direct meetings with Bays. And we have had, as you, I hope, will have seen, quite a lot of press coverage by now, and there's quite a head of steam built behind the campaign, and also the other excluded groups across the UK. So we really are gathering pace at this point. There are two major things that we're doing currently to kind of bring the campaign to a conclusion and hopefully get it over the line and get a positive result for our supporters. So the first is that we have a live press conference on Monday, the 23rd of November in the evening with your lovely Mayor, Metro Mayor Steve Rotherham, and also Andy Burnham, Mayor for Greater Manchester. We'll be shining a light on some case studies of limited companies that have been really adversely affected in the Northwest. Obviously sort of talking about the levelling up agenda and how this is kind of derailing that. So we're hoping that that event will also bring some press interest to the campaign trail. And we are also working on a project with a group of experts in their field. We've got a working party together, which is pretty exciting. We have written a policy proposal for the Treasury for how they could pay directors dividends. In essence, to date, Treasury have said it's too difficult, it's too complicated, and they don't hold the right information from our tax returns and the various financial records that we give them multiple times a year. They can't connect the dots. And in June, when the Treasury Select Committee said, you really should pay these guys against their dividends, we thought, great, vindication, you know, this is really positive. But Rishi Sunak's response to that was, though they should, they're not going to. So we had a period in the campaign from sort of July onwards where we thought, okay, the dividends thing is so dead, it's deader than a dodo. He's told us it's never going to happen. And we looked at loads of other ways the Treasury could support small business and save the jobs, you know, the 7.5 million people employed by small businesses across the UK. So we looked at things like corporation tax rebates and increasing employers' employment allowance and reducing employers' NICs and lots of other gears and levers that the Treasury could pull if they wanted to help us. And we made a proposal to Treasury then, backed by the Institute of Directors and the FSB and various people. And nothing happened, no go. So the frustration levels have been very, very high. And I was watching the House of Commons, it wasn't PMQs, but it was, you know, a debate about a month ago. And I kept seeing ministers standing up in the chamber and saying, well, of course, if somebody could come up with a proposal for that, you know, we'd consider it. I think Alok Sharma has said it. I think Rishi Sunak has said it. I think Boris Johnson has said it. And I just sat there and I just had a sort of light bulb and I thought, hang on a minute, right? We're the directors of companies that I wear 52 hats when I run my business. I'm really resourceful. I've got all these skills. I'm a problem solver. It's in the DNA of business people to take risks and solve problems and push and find solutions. I was like, we're going to find a solution and we're going to give it to them and then we'll see what they say. So I collected the A team of super people to help us on this mission. So the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants have been involved in the project. They obviously know quite a bit. about accountancy. The FSB have helped us with this project, and also a real specialist in her field, a lady called Rebecca Seeley Harris, who runs a business called Relegal Consulting, and her background is law and tax. A heady combination. IR35 specialist, employment status and law specialist, has worked at the Office of Tax Simplification. I could go on. Her creds are like A-list. And we set about trying to find a solution, and we believe we found a solution, and we've submitted it, and we await nervously a response. And I guess we just want to see the whites of their eyes now, that, you know, this is a chance to say, okay, 8 months ago you said it was too difficult. We've brought you a potential solution. It's fully costed. You know, it's a proper gold-plated policy proposal. Do you want to do it? Yeah. We await a response. And obviously the spending review is Wednesday of next week. Yeah. So it's very timely to put it over to them. Yeah, and I think for us, this is the big one, you know.
Yeah, and I have to say, you know, given the time that it's taken to get to this point, I mean, I don't think any of us anticipated we were going to be in lockdown for quite so long. I admire your resilience and the fact that able to keep going in what are really challenging circumstances for all those people you're working with, but for you personally. And I know that
some call it madness, not resilience, but yeah, I hear you.
Whether it's madness or not, you know, you're in a position now where you quite literally are saying to the government, put your money where your mouth is. Here's the solution. The other thing I was going to say, Gina, is, for, you know, as I say, personally, I know you've been impacted by this, but also during the past 7 or 8 months, you've probably been acting almost as a counsellor for some of the people that you've been dealing with.
Definitely.
And at the conference this evening with Andy and Steve, people will actually be able to hear some of those direct experiences, won't they? Because, you know, sometimes in statistics and figures, and when we're talking about financial support, we forget about the human impact that these decisions are taking. So just tell us 1 or 2 stories that have stuck out for you.
Lovely guy called Steve from your fair city, worked in manufacturing for 18 years, aerospace and automotive. His professional indemnity insurance was extremely expensive, and after having no money coming in for a period of a number of months, his insurances were due. He couldn't justify the expenditure, so he just put his business on ice and walked away and took a very menial job compared to his experience. His wife is a frontline COVID nurse. You know, hard. He has kids. He struggled.
Yeah, and I think, you know, you'll have dozens of those stories, but I think the sad part of all this for me is that it's a story that's been lost in a whole noise of things that have been going on over the past 8 months. And obviously at the forefront of people's minds has been employees, staff, people who obviously we all want to protect. And of course the irony, and again, I'm sure this will be touched upon in your press conference this evening, is that whilst company directors haven't been getting government support, we have been passing on furlough payments and often popping up those payments to make sure that the teams that work for us and with actually have been protected. And again, Gina, I know you're aware of many, many instances where that's happened. And I think that's been lost in this whole debate.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to Lindsay, a lovely lady who runs a corporate catering company in Ivor, with her husband, and they're both directors of that company, and they have 7 staff, and their 7 staff, as you say, have been furloughed. But before the extension in the November, you know, the last extension that was very, very 11th hour, she said she came within 2 hours of making all of her staff redundant. So mentally, she had gone through that emotional journey. You know, they're like her family, they've worked for her for years. She'd written the letters, she'd, you know, dotted the I's and crossed the T's, and the investment in making that decision was exhausting, and emotionally she was wrung out. And then the extension to furlough was announced, and so for her it was jubilation. But we were talking about the fact that it's like, it's a lovely analogy one of our campaign team used initially, a girl called Kate. It's like operating on the hand to save the hand and then chopping off the arm. You know, it's not making sense. We're furloughing all these staff, and that for us, that's 7.5 million people work for micro and small limited companies. But we're just letting the businesses slowly wane. And will those jobs be there in spring for them to come back to? And if they're not, a proportion of the 41.4 billion that's been spent on furlough is wasted, right? Yeah. It's just down the grid. You know, what's the point been? So a plaster on a broken leg, you know, there's so many different analogies. It's deeply frustrating. Yeah. Because for us, we also see when we talk to the individuals, a really high number are home-based or mobile. So they haven't had any access to any grants. So no property-based grants, the original grants that were given out, no discretionary grant fund in lots of parts of the country. The criteria barred you if you were home-based. And the new ARG grants that are launching now, even though essential criteria for the ARGs are that you can be home-based, it's permissible, which is for us a big change. The reality is that when the local authorities are now publishing their criteria, and I want to say Maidstone as an example have now opened that grant fund, they're excluding home-based businesses, even though the central government mandate is that they can include them. They're just saying the pot's not big enough. Yeah. We're not going to. It's going to be the same people that are going to get another bite of the cherry. Now, if you're in that team, you know, it's not sour grapes. We're very appreciative that those people's businesses will be supported. But for the people that are in the out team, it's 3 slaps in the face in a row. So, yeah, you can save the staff, but the businesses are just crumbling.
Yeah, and I think one of the problems that we've had with the government's approach on a whole range of things, and I think this issue highlights it very clearly, is that lack of strategic thinking. So they don't see the big picture. As you rightly say there, it's almost putting a stick in plaster on a situation which needs a bloody big bandage, let's face it. And again, I know we don't, listen, we're business people, so we know that money doesn't go on trees. We know there isn't much pit, but equally, I think the point that you've just made there, Gina, is the key one. Why would you put at risk a 40+ billion investment on the basis of saving what is going to be a minuscule amount in comparison? Because if those company directors aren't supported, and Lord forbid, this thing continues for another 3 or 4 months, then as you say, there's 7.5 million people's jobs in serious jeopardy. And I can't believe that that is the intention that the Chancellor had when he announced his business.
No. And we've done some research within our own group. So obviously the sample sizes are not, you know, nationally representative. They've not been weighted. You know, if I was doing a proper research, Ipsos Mori, I would have done it, you know, much more robustly than this. But within our own groups, through our social media channels, stats like 93% of people don't know if their business will be here in March 2021.
It's frightening.
Stats like 46% of people think they will make their staff redundant at the end of furlough. So that's half the jobs that have been saved.
Yeah, not been saved.
You know, they haven't been saved. It's just kicking the can down the road. It's not saving them. It's just deferring the pain, I think, sadly.
Yeah. And Gina, you're anticipating a decision. I think you're right to do so in terms of the proposal you've put by Wednesday in time for the Chancellor's announcement?
Well, we've asked the Treasury, so it's gone into Treasury, Director Rishi Sunak and Jessie Norman, and we've asked them to consider it, clearly, to discuss it with us, and with a view to, giving those assurances that it's being worked on potentially as part of the spending review, because that would give comfort to a lot of people that that discussion was taking place, that consideration was being given to something. We're not going to have a solution by Wednesday, but a commitment to discuss, to sit at the table. Yeah, we would hope so by next Wednesday.
That would be progress. Finally, just tell us about the press conference tonight. I know you've been working hard to get Andy and Steve in a room. Press conference this evening, so plenty of meetings. I think it's 7:30, isn't it?
I think it's 7. She says confidently. I think it's 7, roughly 7 till 8. Probably won't be the full hour. Yeah, we're going to have some case studies of business owners from both of the city regions, Greater Manchester and Liverpool. Press with some questions. Yeah, it's going to be interesting because the stories are so diverse. But like you say, the human angle, it's really shocking actually hearing people's stories and how this has impacted them and their business. Their businesses are their babies. It's really difficult.
And Gina, if people want to join that Zoom call, how can they register?
We're still working that through at the moment, but I suspect most likely it will be live streamed in a number of places. So it will be live streamed through the Forgotten Ltd channels. So at Forgotten Ltd on Twitter and on Facebook, Forgotten Ltd. Yeah. It will probably also be live streamed through the Mayor's offices. So both Andy Burnham and Steve Rotherham's social media channels. It may well also go on Twitter. We will post in our group imminently where you'll be able to find it. So if you want to find it and you can't find it organically, check out the Forgotten Ltd channels and I'm sure you'll get a signpost there. That's fantastic. Gina, as always, great to see you. And I'll tell you, it never ceases to amaze me the fact that you've always got a smile on your face despite all the difficulties and challenges you've had. So all power to your elbow, and let's keep our fingers crossed for good news from the Chancellor next week. Thanks, Gina. Thanks, Frank.